Doug McWilliams. I live in Berkeley, California. I was a photographer, have been a photographer all my life. I've shot baseball since 1950. I've shot Major League Baseball since 1971. When I was 10 years old, I was invited to a birthday party, and they gave away baseball cards as a gift to each attendee. And I also got a subscription to Sport magazine, which had beautiful full-page color pictures of athletes in it. And I was really attracted to Ozzie Sweet, who did baseball mostly, I think. And I thought, gee, that would be kind of nice to be able to do that. I was just getting interested in photography. My dad was an amateur photographer and gave me a small folding Kodak camera. Also that year, I started listening on the radio to the Oakland Oaks baseball games. And they had a little feature on there about the baseball cards they were giving away at Signal Oil. And if you stop by your local gas station, they'll give you a new card. And they were in full color. And so I finally talked my father into taking me to one of the games. He wasn't a fan of sports at all. And we stopped by at a Signal Oil gas station, and I got a baseball card of Ray Hamrick, who was a shortstop for the Oaks. And we got to the ballpark. It was evening, and I got up to the top of the walkway and looked down on the field. It was all lit up. It looked like it was magic. And I saw down by the fence there was Ray Hamrick signing autographs. So I borrowed a fountain pen from my dad and ran down there and got him to sign it. And I was hooked. Hooked more on baseball cards than the game. Yeah, the Pacific Coast League put out cards after the war just about every year until 1953 or so. And they stopped, and I had a good friend, a neighborhood friend, who became quite well known in the hobby of collecting baseball, Dick Dobbins. And he said, let's go to the ballpark and take our own pictures. And he had a home that had enough room to have a dark room in it. So we would go and shoot a game. Each team was in Oakland for 7 days. So we'd shoot the first day they came in, and then we'd go have them processed and go back on the weekend and get them signed. And after a while, the players started buying them. This is what I used to shoot my Pacific Coast League players when I started shooting in 1954. This is a picture taken with this camera, and it came with the decal edges. That was the big feature at the day in 1954. I got away from baseball when I was a kid because I went away to college. I went to a place called Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara. I was a commercial illustration major, but we had portraiture also. And we got the classical portraiture posing, and that's what I used. But the A's came to Oakland in 1968, and in '69 they had a picture day. So I went down on the field with my 35mm Leica and flash bulbs, and took pictures of the players as they came by. And it reminded me of when I was a kid. So this is kind of fun. So I started going to the games and shooting out of the stands, and got to know the players, some of them, and they wanted to buy pictures too. At that point, I'd already been a photographer at the University of California for 10 years almost. And I knew I could do well, because I'd been doing well. I just kept shooting out of the stands, and pretty soon a guy came by named Jim Mudcat Grant, who I had photographed as a kid, probably 15 years before, and he remembered me, which I was totally shocked. He was with the A's for a while. I did some pictures for him. He got traded to Pittsburgh, and then he came back. And the A's told him to get some new PR pictures. He needed to make an appointment with their photographer. Mudcat said, Doug's going to do my pictures for the PR. And they said, who? And so I got my foot on the field for the first time through him. And when he posed for me, I got the pictures up to the PR people, and they approved them and used them. And about that same time, Vita Blue was coming up in September to show what he could do, and he stayed with Mudcat. And I did some pictures for Vita for his family. Well, the next year, which I guess was 71, I may have my dates mixed up, but he won the Cy Young and the MVP both. And he came to me and says, I need postcards. I'd been doing postcards, photographic postcards in black and white for quite a few of the A's by that time. And he says, I want color. And I says, well, what do you want, 100 or 200? I was thinking photographically making them. I made my black and whites photographically. And he says, I get 100 letters a day. I need lots of them. So the upshot was that I did 3 different printings for him, about 15,000 colored postcards. All of them had my name and address down the center of the postcard back. And one of them landed on the desk of Cy Berger at Topps in Brooklyn. And soon I got a call from him saying, we like your work. Would you like to shoot for Topps? I said, well, is the Pope Polish? I think I would. These are some black and white proofs of color prints from the first week that I shot for Topps. These were done at Casa Grande, Arizona. I did black and white proofs just for myself to prove to myself that I was there. I didn't know if I'd ever go back. Okay. This was my first tryout. And then from then on, I was with them for 23 years. I was the Arizona photographer for spring training. I believe there were 2 more in Florida. Only had 4 teams the first year. After that, we had 7, and then we had 8, and then it's expanded to 15 now. Some of the managers were extremely good to me, John McNamara and Dick Williams in particular. And he managed about 4 of the teams that I shot in Arizona. He seemed to have been there my whole career. He'd come up to me and say, how's it going? He said, you got everybody? And I'd say, no, I still need to get a few people. He'd stand right beside me and call them in off the field and make sure I got everybody. And occasionally I'd have the San Diego Padres or the Seattle Mariners team shot by 11 o'clock.
So for the uninitiated, give us a sense what the scope of work involved as a photographer shooting for Topps.
I was only hired on a yearly basis. So I always had to wait for the letter or a call. Later on it was a call. But they would tell me which teams to cover, and it generally was all of them. Take 6 pose pictures of everybody in full color. Shoot 16 rolls of 36 exposure action during the games. Also, I was instructed to photograph the player facing the sun with a shadow of the cap bill across their face. And they told me that showed ruggedness and character. I, to myself, thought it shows poor lighting. I never shot my own pictures that way. Why not turn the guy around, use flash fill? You got the sun coming from behind to separate him from the background, and you get beautiful portraits of people. I always shot a grayscale and a color chart every time I started because the lab could use that. I never saw other photographers doing that. And that's something I used to do at the University of California when I was shooting there. So, quality. That's the whole name of the game. I insist on having the best quality possible. This is the main camera that I used for Topps. It's a 400 millimeter, a Tamron SP f2.8 lens, which means it's got a lot of glass. It's very, fast. It's a Nikon, at the time, one of the better ones, FE2. I was responsible for my own equipment when I worked for Topps.
So how did you keep track of all the different players? Because you would shoot a number of images of each one. How do you keep track of them, and how does that get tracked back to Topps when they're figuring out who's who and what to do with it?
I devised a system where I had a roster sheet. I printed up my own, and I'd have little stickers with all the numbers of the players on it. And I could get 2 players per roll of 120 film on the posed shots, and I'd pull off the sticker, put it on the roll when I was through, and then put a piece of tape around it, and then I'd send the roll off. It would have like number 3 and number 10, and they'd know, if they keep track of it at the processing place, then they'd know who was on that roll.
Now, what were some of your favorite baseball cards you shot, and why do you like them?
Harold Reynolds is probably the nicest portrait I have, and I think it's good because he apparently liked me. He talked to me quite a bit. and I really enjoyed talking with him, and he just had a great smile and just a sweet personality. Another one is a kid who was a track star from Michigan for the A's, and when he came in, he got a real hard time from a lot of the baseball players because he didn't know all the rules about baseball. But I was able to get him out on the field and take a pose shot of him where he's leading off first base rather than during a game, so I could control the light and the exposure and add flash fill. And that's one of my favorite pictures too. Well, each year that I shot for Topps, I tried to pick out a favorite picture from each team that I photographed and then put it on a card with what the wrapper or what the box looked like. Just so something I could remember. The ones I have here are actually from '83 on to toward the end of my career. The earlier cards I didn't think had a lot of interesting graphics to them, and the print quality was better on the later years. So these are some of my favorites. This is Billy Martin, who was a Berkeley boy, went to high school with my brother. And that's probably the best picture I've ever taken of him. And it was during, actually, he was talking to reporters, and I was just kind of hovering around him and shooting candids. An awful lot of these are candids or during the game because in the mid-'80s, the players didn't want to pose. They liked to have the action shots. I still was required to shoot headshots. At this point, they started putting 2 pictures on the front of the card. Later on, they put pictures on the back too. So there was a lot of shooting to do. Tony Gwynn, what a wonderful guy he was. Very friendly, took time to stop and talk. And when that card came out the next spring, he came up to me and said, "I hate that card." That was his rookie card, which has extra value. He says, "All it shows is my big rear end." And I had nothing to say because I didn't choose it. I sent them probably 10 pictures in action and 6 posed pictures. And they used this posed one, but they didn't use any other one. All right. And this is another local guy, Larry Bawa. I think he was from Sacramento. But most of them are candids. There's a few poses here. Posing was my specialty for Topps. And this is mostly all posing. This card here was picked as the card of the year that year. And that was shot in Palm Springs against a advertisement in the background that was red. And so I thought that looks pretty neat. I started doing available light with higher speed film in the dugout. I just loved it because the light came in from a direction and it was always there in shade. So to me, that's good lighting. These are mostly posed. Here's one from a game with Robin Yount. Champ Summers was a good friend who played for the Oakland A's also, and always very nice. Julio Franco was a good guy. When Topps came out with the glossy cards, he charged me to go out and buy them every set in gloss. And occasionally I'd get asked to take pictures of players in Oakland, and they needed a picture of Eric Rasmussen. So that's why he's in a traveling uniform with Oakland in the background.
Now, talk a little bit about that Mike Vail picture. What do you like about that one?
Well, that's another one of the pictures they needed in San Francisco rather than in spring training. They'd come up with a list of people they needed to have in the next year's set. It was unusual for me to shoot any of the teams that weren't in Arizona during the season, but in this period of time when they were adding extra pictures to them, I worked all year round. I photographed in Oakland and in San Francisco, picking up more pictures of the players. This is '87. Here's my old friend George Hendrick. Had a wonderful thing happen with him in Tucson. I had known him. He was the first picture I sold to Topps when he was with the A's. And my parents had moved to Sun City, Arizona, and I stayed with them. And my dad came with me to Tucson to shoot the Cleveland Indians. It wasn't this picture, this is with the Angels. And I introduced George to my dad, and then I went on and shot other players and looked around. I couldn't find my dad. And I said, where the heck did he go? And I looked up in the stands, and there was George Hendrick and my father sitting up in the stands talking for about a half hour. And it was just amazing. When, on the ride home, my dad says, you know, you got a pretty interesting job. He had never said boo to me about it before.
Talk about that Jay Howell baseball card, because the thing that really strikes me about that is the incredible burst of color that comes off of it. What are the particulars for this? What did you shoot it with, and how did these colors get so rich?
It's shot with an RB67 Mamiya. It shoots a 120 film. It gives you a color transparency, which is 2 1/4 by 2 3/4 inches in size. It's almost 1:1, so you get really good quality. I'm using flash fill to complement the sunshine, and so you can see them. And here's another shot in the dugout with the light coming from the side, which I really like doing with 35 millimeter. So the action ones are 35, and the close-ups are with the large camera. And this is I don't know what year the Stadium Club started, but the quality of the printing is just fantastic. This is another shot done in the dugout. And the rest are posed with my large camera. Some pretty good names here, Dawson. I like doing the posed shots. This is kind of like what Ozzie Sweet used to do. I never had a Willie Mays pictured on a Topps card, but I did come across one of his agreements with Topps, signed by Willie and Cy Berger, who was my boss at Topps. And later on, I photographed Willie when he was showing up at Candlestick quite a bit, and got some very nice images of him. I especially like this one. I believe it was at a special day they had for Willie McCovey. And he was really relaxed and leaning on a table and talking to a bunch of guys, and so he wasn't paying attention to me, and that's the best picture I ever shot of him, I think.
So you mentioned in the 80s they didn't like to pose. What do you think was the reason for that?
They wanted to see themselves in action. I don't blame them for that. I mean, it's fun to have action shots. But at that time, the equipment was getting better, so they could get better shots, better action shots. The first couple of years that Topps used candid shots and action shots, they weren't very good, and the cropping was terrible.
Talk about getting started, your friendship with Vida Blue, and what his friendship has meant to you over the years.
Well, it's been fun to know him. Mostly, I met him when he was a young 18-year-old kid, and he was very friendly, and I enjoyed that. And he came to me to have some work done, and it got me going as far as a second job, in an area that I just pinched myself, that I actually had 24 years in the big leagues, 23 years actually shooting for Topps, but I made a lot of friends, and I still have many friends that were baseball players, and keep in touch, and I enjoy that. Willie McCovey was a special one. I did a lot of postcards for Willie also, maybe 3 different times. I loved the way I loved his southern drawl and the way he spoke. And he would call the house, and Mary, my wife, just loved talking to him. He always said, Doug, this is McCovey. And you knew who he was anyway before he even said his name.
Now, you're friends with Reggie Jackson, and this is a guy who has a bit of a prickly reputation. What can you tell us about Reggie, the type of person he is that goes against that reputation?
Well, personally, he's always been extremely nice to me. I don't know why. I guess it's because I'm nice to him. I met Reggie when I came to the games in '69. And I did postcards for him, and he just was extremely nice to me and took time to talk to me. He's always posed for me. I had a chance to be on Evening Magazine about shooting baseball cards, and he agreed to come out and talk about my ability as a photographer, and that was nice to do. He was with the Angels at the time. Shooting for Topps and having to get 6 posed pictures sometimes can be very difficult. So I saw Frank Robinson down the right field line, and it's hard to photograph every player just how you want to, because you have to pick them up when you can. And so I ran down the line and asked if I could take his picture, and he said, sure, but I'd like to have a bat in my hand. I'm a hitter. And I agreed with that, so I went back to the dugout, grabbed a bat, took it back to him, handed it to him. He took a couple swings with it, says, mighty fine bat, except the company I have a contract with isn't this company. And they wouldn't like me to pose with it, so okay. Back to the clubhouse to see Mickey Shishido, who had just come there from Oakland, and who I knew, and he was the clubhouse man for the Angels. And I said, could I have Frank's bat? And he knew me, so he handed it to me, and I went back down the line, handed Frank the bat. He says, you're all right. Now what would you like? And I'd seen Frank before and since kind of bark at people, and if they don't speak up, he'll just turn away and do something else. He hasn't got time. I guess he doesn't suffer fools. So I stood up to him, I guess, and that worked. I had one fellow who was a pitcher with the A's and also the Cubs, and I think maybe Seattle too, named Jim Todd. And he liked photography, and he liked my photography, and so he would challenge me to do something different each year and pay for it. He had me take a picture of him going through his entire pitching windup, where he changed colored shirts all the way through, and then I picked out the best ones and had him change, from the start to the end of his delivery, where his shirt color changed. And that was kind of fun. And then I mounted it in front of a portrait of him that I did, and then mounted it on a wood plaque.
Share the story of Jeff Cox and the error card.
I had a habit of photographing all the Oakland A's players when they were in the minors, if I could. And I happened to have photographed Jeff with Modesto and Vancouver and San Jose, just about everywhere he played. And so I knew him. And he finally got up to the big club, spring training, and he was so excited to find out that he might be on a Topps card. And so the card came out, and I was so happy to hear about that. And I looked at the back, and all the statistics were correct, and it said Oakland A's on the front. And I looked at the picture, and it was Steve McCaddy. And I don't think the Hobbies discovered that yet. So I felt so bad for him that I made him 10 cut and paste. This is before computers. And gave them to him to give to his family and friends. Charlie Finley, as far as I can tell, thought that you went to the Yellow Pages and you looked under photographers and you hired somebody to come take their pictures. My first year with having a pass from Major League Baseball, I was an A's fan to start with, and so after the season was over, I sent him a 5x7 of every player in color, mainly to show him that there's better ways to do the pictures of his players. I didn't say that, but that's what I meant. In Thanksgiving of '72, Charlie called me to thank me for some pictures that I had sent of him. And he kept me on the phone for an hour and a half, just as we were ready to sit down to dinner. My wife was not pleased, but I didn't think I should hang up on him. He praised me, he threatened to sue me, and I was rather confused by the time I hung up.
In 1976, free agency took root in Major League Baseball for the first time. Players could now offer their services in a competitive marketplace. Charlie Finley felt his small market team wouldn't be able to compete with the likes of the Yankees and Dodgers, and commenced a fire sale of his impending free agents. Reggie Jackson was traded to Baltimore. Vida Blue was ticketed for the Yankees. Finley sold pitcher Raleigh Fingers and outfielder Joe Rudy to the Boston Red Sox for $1 million each. The Red Sox happened to be playing in Oakland, so Fingers and Rudy strolled over to the Red Sox clubhouse and suited up. Doug arrived at the ballpark early that night to take advantage of the late afternoon light. Rudy and Fingers would never take the field for Boston that week, as baseball commissioner Bowie Kuhn intervened, voiding the sales in the best interests of baseball, and had Rudy, Fingers, and Blue returned to the A's. Doug's historic photographs of Raleigh Fingers that night remain the only color images taken of him in a Boston uniform.
I got to the ballpark about 5:30. It was on a weeknight. They were playing Boston, and on the way in I heard that they had been traded, and also Vital Blue had been sold to the Yankees. And there was a buzz everywhere. And so I went down to the Boston dugout and waited for them to show up, and here they came in their Boston uniforms. And at that point, there weren't many magazine photographers coming unless they had an appointment, and the newspaper guys were shooting black and white, and there weren't many there actually. They all come later for shoot the game. So I got posed pictures of all of them in color, and of course Raleigh's became rather unique because the next day he was back with the A's.
Were there any sort of odd or different poses from the past that you tried shooting?
Yeah, one time I took a ladder to shoot down on him and get just an all-green background. I did it with Bobby Tolan, with San Diego. I did it with Phil Garner. Some people kind of made fun of me because I did that, but I was trying to look for a different idea.
So when did you decide to hang him up, and why?
I didn't decide. Topps decided. But it made sense that they got rid of me. I'd been with them 23 years. I'd gone through 2 generations. I probably had shot 30 or 40 father-son combinations. I noticed that the players were gravitating toward the younger photographers. I was in my late 50s. I was looking like Grandpa. So it was probably time to go. And they could get I was making very good money at the time, and they could probably get 2 or 3 photographers for what they were paying me. In my outside business, away from Topps, I did personal pictures for the players, and I discovered a wooden plaque that you could mount pictures on and then carve out around the edges that sort of matched the plaque. And you spray paint it matte, and it makes a very attractive item. In the 1980s, 2 companies came out that were buying everything up the photographers had of baseball players because it was so popular to go to a card show or a signing session and get a signed 8x10. And generally a sports photographer, makes a whole bunch of shots and sells 1 or 2 and never looks at them again. So here they had a chance to make a second sale of everything they had, and everybody did it except me, apparently, because I was contacted by a company called Photofile, and I said, no, I don't want my pictures being sold for $1. They're worth more than that to me. So I never did it. And I had already made arrangements to give all my stuff to the Hall of Fame in the 1970s. Couldn't bear to send it in the mail. I mean, what if it got lost? So I took a trip, and with my son-in-law we went back, and I gave him 11,000 2¼ by 2 3/4 inch negatives in color. They use it all the time, and it's wonderful. They do beautiful reproductions. They use them in their yearbooks. They use them in their quarterly they put out. And I still have 15,000 to send them, 35 millimeter and digital. Keeps me busy. keeps me alive. Keeps me going. I've got plenty to do.
So as a baseball fan, what do you like to collect for yourself?
I collect mostly on the A's. I probably have everything that's involved with the A's ever since they started. All the programs. I have all the uniforms, every uniform that changed. And I have about 105 uniforms. And I've just sold them, I hope. Pictures. I have lots of pictures. I also accumulate classic pictures of Major League Baseball from the 20s and 30s and 40s. Baseball was pretty nice. You got to know the players. You had free time to talk to them. They had free time. It wasn't as regimented, and that appealed to me. baseball has become a problem to me because I'm so immersed in it. Photography has become a problem with me because I'm continuously looking at everything and making a picture out of it. That little thing has got a hold of me. I like college football, I like college basketball, but I love Major League, minor league baseball, professional baseball. And I like the people who play it.